We are rolling straight into our next conversation, boosting sales with delivery during COVID-19. So here at Meadow, we really pride ourselves on building the best retail and delivery software specifically for California operators. Within 24 hours of cannabis being declared essential at the start of the pandemic, we saw our partner dispensaries turn on functionality like delivery and express pickup to meet the changing needs of their customers. So the world of cannabis retail really changed almost overnight. So we're excited to hear today how dispensaries and delivery operators have adjusted their SOPs for safety and sanitation while launching omnichannel sales to meet customer needs and grow their business. We're so pleased to introduce Monica Gray, the COO of Nice Guys Delivery. In 2016, Monica and her husband Adam started Nice Guys with the intention of providing clean cannabis and CBD delivery options to adults and patients in Marin County, California. Monica's team is dedicated to bring professionalism and education to help guide their members about the validated benefits of cannabis for health. So nice to see you here, Monica. Thanks for joining us. We also have Erin Gore, the CEO of Garden Society. Erin and her female-led business are on a mission to redefine cannabis for women with delicious cannabis-infused chocolates and beautiful rosette cannabis pre-rolls designed to turn up the joy, which is definitely something we could all use more of. Garden Society is also one of the first cannabis brands to be building a storefront on Meadow with delivery in Sonoma and Napa counties. And we're so happy to have you here today, Erin. I'm so glad you could join us. We also have Ted Lichtenberger, the CEO of Flower Co. So like Meadow, Flower Co. is another cannabis company to be groomed in Y Combinator, the Silicon Valley Tech Accelerator. Ted and his team have built a membership-based service that delivers high-quality, low-price cannabis to consumers across California. So Ted's members-only weed club sells legal weed at street prices, meaning they price their products to be competitive with the illicit market. Thank you, Ted, so much for being here. And finally, we have Robert Fierro, our moderator today, who is the strategic account executive at Onfleet. Onfleet is a logistics management software and route optimization for businesses offering last-mile delivery. Meadow's integration with Onfleet makes it easy for dispensaries to expand their market borders and create a new stream of revenue in their region and beyond with convenient on-demand ordering. Yeah, Robert, why don't you take it away?
Yeah.
Thank you, Aria. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for inviting me. I wanted to first thank Meadow for the invitation, thank Aria for her superpowers of coordinating events as I've seen through the other Meadowlands. And thank Hu and Onfleet. And Onfleet, or Hu and I have kind of grown up together. Onfleet and Meadow have grown up together. We started around the same time. So I feel like we're almost like kids going through this education period together and kind of graduating out of that. But it's been an incredible experience to have a complementary platform in the cannabis space. And then I, of course, want to thank the panelists as well, Monica, Erin, and Ted for joining me here and really taking the reins and talking about something that's really important in this period of COVID-19, which is delivery. Amazingly enough, and as Ari was saying, there's just been so much change that has happened, rapid change, and there's been a lot of things that people have adapted to with their companies. So it's really incredible to see how quickly people can adopt delivery and keep their businesses moving forward. And just wanted to start out with a few questions to kind of drive some conversation here. And just to begin, really just going to ask the panelists about how did you guys get involved in the cannabis industry? Just to learn a little bit more about your personal, journey into cannabis. And I don't know if, Erin, I see on the screen in front of me, so if you wanted to start it up.
Sucker! Just kidding. Thanks, Robert, and to Hua and Aria, the team. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I would want to give a forewarning that I have a toddler running around, so there might be a child bomb. I apologize in advance if that happens. Seems to be the worst timing, as always. So I got into cannabis through self-need. I think like so many of these amazing friends and peers I have out here in Meadowlands virtual, I fell in love with the plant because I was battling chronic pain. I was a Division I athlete who ended up having my first hip rebuilt in 2011 and my second in 2012. And I realized I needed a really quick and long-term solution away from opiates to be a better version of myself. And so I became obsessed with the science. I'm a chemical engineer. It worked for me. I had an aha moment around this magical plant. I'm blessed to live in Sonoma. So my husband and I started growing. He had been growing, but we really started getting into different cultivars and the chemistry and the distillation and the technology. And I found edibles was for me. I got my card. I felt like there were no products designed for me, a modern woman, in the marketplace back in 2011 and 2012. So I was making them on my own. And what really was the moment that put it over the top for me when I found my purpose was I had a very successful corporate career. My husband and I launched a wine brand. I felt like I was having a lot of external success, but I was really unhappy. I literally said to my husband, I had no friends, etc. But I was also having at the same time these monthly gatherings of women talking about cannabis, and they started growing and growing and growing. And there was a moment where I had over 50 women at my house who I had this aha moment that they were all like me, like they had all the same struggles I had. And I felt normal for the first time. And I felt a connection to community deep within my community in Sonoma County for the first time. And it was those two kind of aha moments that pivoted me to actually quit my corporate job in 2016 and set out to build what is now Garden Society. So we're a benefit corporation focused on helping women find more joy through cannabis. We serve the canna-confident female and men too. We make edibles, chef-driven edibles here in Sonoma County and pre-rolls, and we're vertically licensed here in Sonoma. So we have a manufacturing, distribution, and on-storefront license here. So we're in 141 stores today statewide, and then have a pretty innovative direct-to-consumer business that we're really excited to partner with Meadow on.
And I love the sense of community, Erin, as a driving factor. I mean, it's huge. I feel very similar in my own journeys. I think when you're alone in the world using your product, it's a little different than when you find out that there's a whole community out there that really can be there with you. So thanks for that. And then Monica, did you want to jump in on that just to discuss how you got involved?
Yeah, sure. Arya pretty much summed it up perfectly. It's good to see everybody via Zoom. It's a bummer that we can't hang out in Camp Navarro like we did the last 2 years. That was the glory days, but it's good to see faces in this new era. We got into, I guess, got into this cannabis industry because of my partner, my husband, Adam, who was working in the cannabis market for the last 25 years. Plus, I mean, I don't know how long, he says since he was 15, so it might have been a little bit longer than that. And he, I never knew that he was actually working in the cannabis industry until I, would walk into his garage and it smelled like weed. And I was working in corporate America. I worked in product development for Calvin Klein, J. Crew in New York, doing accessories, handbags, and apparel and footwear for years. I've worked for Skechers. I've worked for a shoe company. My last job was the senior director of product and costing for a footwear company called Vionic Shoes, who they make orthopedic insoles and shoes that have a built-in footwear or foot bed that helps with plantar fasciitis. And so with that company, I kind of got to know the medical field of how even products can help with medical issues. And it was interesting because I had no idea that cannabis could be delivered. I really didn't know anything about cannabis aside from doing bong rips in college and smoking a little bit in high school. And once I kind of got to know, I was pregnant with our first kid, and my husband, he wanted to open a delivery service. Again, I never knew that existed. And he started to do some research. I started getting involved in local legislation and going to city council meetings. I quit my corporate job and threw myself into this beautiful world of this industry that has just become my family. It's just been obviously struggles. Being a new parent, I've had another child since then. So I've got two under 5 years old now, and a delivery service, a distribution business. in San Rafael, California, that's just gone tenfold. Who would have known? Gone from shoes and handbags to cannabis, but it's been amazing, and I'm really thankful for this community, like Erin said, and the people that I've met through this beautiful plant.
Oh, thank you, Monica. And I mean, just as a plug, I am a Nice Guys recipient for deliveries. So and not to be biased, but I do love the service. And I like the common theme going on involving the significant others, involving the people in the cannabis industry. So I like the partnerships going on. And then Ted, if you just wanted to talk about your own experiences, it'd be great.
Yeah, so I got into the cannabis industry a little more than 4 years ago. Before that, I worked at McKinsey, where I would turn around companies that were in bankruptcy or heading there, or advise like big consumer packaged good companies. And I was stoked about the industry because I'd been a consumer since I was growing up, and I'd also previously built an eyewear company, and I just enjoyed building physical product things. This was back in 2016, and I just reached out to everybody I knew and asked to get connected with folks who had been in the industry and needed help. And I got super lucky to connect with a criminal defense attorney out of Humboldt County, as well as a cultivator out of Humboldt. And with their help, kind of co-founded and launched a brand called Humboldt Legends, which was a brand that celebrated the terroir, the legacy story, the farmers from Humboldt County, used the relationships from those co-founders up in Humboldt to supply it, as well as to bootstrap the business by brokering flower to dispensaries in LA, as well as biomass to manufacturers. I think I put like 120,000 miles on my car my first 18 months in the industry, just hitting the ground, selling Humboldt Legends in the stores. And back then when we first started, I thought that co-packers were going to be the way we could get to market. We could just be a branding company, but ultimately we were too early and we really needed to build our own supply chain. And so by the beginning of 2018, I had developed about 6 licenses, including volatile extraction, manufacturing, distribution, and realized I could do a lot more with that. And so I used that supply chain to co-found Old Pal, which I always think of as the PBR of weed. I appreciate the chance to be on panels on the same day as Charlie. We actually crossed paths both with Humboldt Legends because I was initially getting distributed by Kiva, and then he came into Old Pal after I was kind of stepping back. But at the same time as I co-founded Old Pal, I also launched Flower Co. And with Flower Company, we sell weed online. Our members pay $119 a year to get cannabis delivered for half the price of a dispensary. And we also have taken the infrastructure and licensing and software that we've developed for Flower Company, and I've reskinned it so that other brands like Can or Fig Farms can have direct relationships with their own consumers, and we power that kind of like a Shopify plus fulfillment by Amazon sort of model. So nice to that's kind of my story. I found the last 4 years to be an amazing learning experience because, you know, we're really on the shoulders of the people who got us here through like long-lasting collective civil disobedience. I respect, you know, what we're kind of building on, but there's also a ton of change that's happening, and it's fun to be part of that and building, you know, the future the way that we want to for the space.
Thanks, Ted. And I just wanted to say, echoing a lot of these comments here, best background, looks great. So appreciate it. And
literally grew roots because of COVID. I couldn't travel all over the state so much anymore. So I had to grow something, you know?
So from here, I'm just going to let you guys comment in on these questions if you feel you have a strong answer that you want to get in there. But just going to really start talking about delivery here, and especially how it's been impacted by the pandemic. So what changes have you seen since the beginning of the pandemic for your delivery operations? I don't know if somebody wants to raise their hands or if they just want to jump in with a answer.
I mean,
Yeah, I can go ahead first if you want.
Okay.
We actually didn't do delivery before the operations. We did it in an interesting way. So for those of you out there who know us, we had garden parties. So these in-home education parties for women. So education forward, think direct sales across Sonoma and Napa counties. And we were powering them through our own delivery license. And so when the pandemic hit, we couldn't do parties anymore. So it was a pretty major pivot for us away from doing the traditional party model. The good thing was we had the compliance in place. We understood the delivery. We would have people be introduced to us through the parties, and then we'd have the follow-on retained sales through the deliveries thereafter. But the first thing we did is obviously we stopped any scheduled party. And then the second thing we did is we onboarded competitive, like-minded brands. So we thought we were better together with numbers, and we really led with female-led brands and diversified our menu to best serve our customer, to be more of a one-stop shop. We recognized we only had a limited product line. And so that's actually done really well for us and propelled us forward through the pandemic, because now our same brand evangelists and consumers that love the parties and wanted to get together had access to all these other beautiful products as conveniently as they had before.
Nice. And I think, Monica, you had started talking there.
Yeah. I mean, what can I say? It just, we exploded. Pandemic hit, and it was a shit show. But first of all, we're so blessed to be acknowledged as an essential business. People really needed us when that hit. I remember I was driving into the office, and I was actually going in to interview somebody for a dispatch position, and I got a text from one of my employees, and he said, what are we going to do? Are we open? And I'm like, what do you mean? Are we open? And it was, we have, do you hear about the shelter in place? And I immediately called the director of economic development of San Rafael. And I said, all right, what's the deal? Are we closed? Are we open? And she was like, nope, you're deemed essential. And part of me was like, yay. And the other part of me was like, oh, I don't want to, like, what does this mean? And I came in, and our Meadow ding was just exploding. We had, on the day, I think it was the 15th of March, we had 600 orders in one day. Our average was around, at that point, I want to say 100 a day, 600 one day. And it was about like 40, no, it was more than that. I don't even remember the dollar amount, but it was just constant. We actually had to shut down for one day to keep up with the demand. Needless to say, we started at the pandemic with 20 employees. I've had to hire 30 more since then. Off and on, and I thought that, and it has leveled off a little bit, but I think that with people now needing the convenience of delivery, like not only in our industry, in the food industry, in like everybody's had to pivot. And I think that especially having people working from home, just no one's like, I mean, people, the retail storefront, I think is still relevant, but they're hurting a bit. Not in the cannabis space necessarily, but in other retail storefront industries. And so, we've maintained a pretty significant increase, not like that first week, but it's just, and then obviously with the additional employees, well, thankfully we've been able to hire people from other industries, and give people jobs that really need them at this time, which has been really, we have just an amazing, wonderful group of people that work for us, with it before and now. But yeah, it's been a huge pivot for us, or not pivot, but just explosion, I would say.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. And then Ted, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, totally. I think the day that it was unclear if we were essential or not was one of the scariest moments I've had as a founder. I thought that if that was the case and we were not essential, it would mean that we would not have the runway to continue to just pay for everybody to be employees, because it wasn't clear if that was going to be, 6 months, a year, or days. And that really scared the shit out of me. I think that we are all incredibly lucky to still be able to operate our businesses, because even the most funded of the operators in this industry just don't have that sort of runway to have survived in a period of like continued no access. So I'm really grateful. We immediately ran into some of the same supply chain issues that other people ran into in terms of just having the proper level of like safety equipment for our employees, and we had to get scrappy. So I'll tell one story that might ring true to other delivery operators, but we were we needed more hand cleaning agent, whether like a gel or just pure alcohol, and we were actually able to get like alcohol spray bottles that we were filling with alcohol from one of the non-volatile like ethanol extraction labs, and they had taken all the THC out of it, but we ended up needing to it was just extra ethanol that they had that was available, so we were able to use that. But just getting kind of scrappy to stay safe and make sure that we as a team were communicating to drivers how important it was for them to use the masks and gloves we had given them, but also just like make sure we had enough equipment for them. I'd say like outside of the actual day-to-day operations elements, which were there were a lot of curveballs like that thrown at us, and I'm proud of our team's ability to keep up with it. The thing that I've been kind of most excited about is how I think this is accelerating a trend towards more direct-to-consumer relationships between brands and their consumers. And so we had only started to power that as a service for brands in January, and we were able to ramp on a couple of extra brands, but the quality of the brands that we were partnering with just getting better, and their commitment to that channel across the board was just increased. So I think that COVID is challenging operators to be creative, and that we're going to come away from this with interesting models where craft cannabis producers are connecting directly with their customer base, where patients can get access to full suites of products from brands that have all of their products on their own site. So I think that part of the industry and the kind of connecting direct to consumer is a really important part of what COVID is accelerating right now.
Great. And yeah, I mean, and I was going to say, even at Onfleet, especially I think the month of April was just this considerable change in the world month. And so we went through our own dramatic changes in the way we were looking at delivery, how to actually help out, especially from the protection of the drivers and the end recipients of the deliveries. And I think to that end, just to kind of piggyback off what you were already saying, Ted, so, what are some of the protocols that you changed around customer engagement and also driver engagement?
I can jump in there.
Okay.
I mean, really, it was one of the biggest things that we changed, and we had to kind of pivot was payment, right? So, I mean, at that time, we were able to take credit cards, and then our credit card system got shut down. So for a minute, we had to just take cash. And I mean, of course, it was,
I remember that moment, Monica.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that really, it was it was the gloves and obviously the mask, the sanitizing everything, and following the local health codes and the CDC guidelines and whatnot. But it was also dealing with cash was just really not. I mean that we were forced to kind of pigeonholed in that area to do that it's just not. I mean, pushing for safe banking is key. So I was trying to put off getting a cannabis bank. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, I need to make this leap. I need to apply for a cannabis bank, which we ended up getting, which was awesome. And luckily the bank that we went forward with had a contactless payment option, which has been golden for us, not only for our safety and our health, just the safety and health of our consumers, our customers too. I think that was definitely something that made us because of this pandemic, really had us pivot to really really focus on that aspect of safety when it comes to contact with our customers, because we love cash, but at the same time, during this time, it was as least contact as you can have as possible, the fastest transactions that you can have as possible, and that was a big pivot move for us.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think for us, we were really forced to make sure that we were building super strong training and communication channels for our drivers. I think before we had maintained that just through the managers that they had, but as we were trying to maintain a consistent message and approach to handling COVID and just the protocols we wanted the drivers to follow, we started to have more systems to gather feedback from drivers, communicate with them. I think it just made us better from a customer service standpoint all around. I think there's actually like a common thread to that in our business, in other places where COVID has forced us to get better at certain things. So, for us, because with COVID, there was a lot of spikiness to the ordering on given days, just because every time some different news thing would happen, people would get they would want to make sure that they had enough cannabis, right? And so you get a spike, and that made it for us. Before, we only were doing delivery 5 days of the week, and it caused like the days on the edges to be really even more spiky because of COVID. So we ended up rolling out next day delivery every day of the week, and that smoothed everything, but it kind of accelerated because of the volatility. It accelerated our product development approach. And so I think that the challenges that COVID has and stress it's created are also causing us to innovate a little bit more as well.
Ted, just to discuss that. So you were going, because I'm familiar with your models. So you were planning, I think you usually do deliveries at the end of the weeks. And then, so how did you create that rapid change to all of a sudden deliver every day?
So we had been delivering 5 days of the week, but we wouldn't do delivery on like Sunday or Monday. And so we were, it meant, and then at one point it's just Sunday we weren't delivering, but it meant because all of our deliveries are pick and packed at one fulfillment center instead of at the last mile retailer. So we were more like an Amazon model than a Domino's. And because of that, for when you don't have any deliveries being pick and packed for Sunday, you get like 2 days orders built up. And with COVID, it was there was a lot more volatility in how many orders you get on a given day. So that was just stressing the team out a lot. So what we ended up doing is adding additional days that we would pick and pack and distro from our fulfillment center to the depot, which just meant our pick and pack team was just operating every day. And then we had to expand the team a little bit at a time when it was kind of hard to do that. But it made it all a lot smoother and made our operations more seamless and just agile. And so we could make sure that we could just deal with the volatility we were seeing. But it's definitely been a very strong year for cannabis delivery.
Yeah, I would say that. And Erin, did you have anything to add?
Sure. I mean, yes, we changed our policies for safety and sanitization and all of that. But I think the biggest thing for me that was our realization is how incredible this community is of operators. So when cannabis was deemed essential here in Sonoma County, we're friends with all the dispensary owners here, and we started having calls saying, how do they turn on dispensary? What are their SOPs? What are our SOPs? And really this collaboration that I hadn't seen across the community as intentional as it became at the start of the pandemic. Obviously, everybody knows about getting San Francisco designated essential, but then it wasn't just beyond the designation, it was actually the operating side of it. So how are you doing this? How are you doing this? Is this okay with code? Have you checked that? Who's got the sign off from the health department? I mean, that to me was really an incredible moment for our community of how we really come together and support each other. And also for how we really rise all ships with the tides through this pandemic and ultimately just benefit our community, right? And our customers and the customer experience. So to me, that was really what was inspiring.
Yeah, and then touching upon the customer experience, I mean, it seems like, especially as retail locations can take a hit during COVID and things can just change, delivery becomes really the touch point for the end consumer. So how have you guys changed with your marketing towards that, or how have you changed in the training process for the drivers? Is there anything that you've done to make it more, I guess, more impactful on those small time frames of visit?
Yeah. So one thing that we did is a lot of times we had a very high touch experience with our customers. So we actually did a pre-call for the deliveries. So we're a lower volume than maybe Ted's company. But we did a lot of education over the phone because we realized that we could educate our consumers as effectively. They were home and available. And then that really limited the interaction with the consumer and the delivery experience. And so we were able to do contactless delivery with them. We had a system worked out where they give us the cash, we give them the product. There was no touching. We maintained social distancing. But then we created a phone-to-phone relationship with them and an online relationship with them that actually has turned out to be more meaningful than any of the in-person. I mean, not that the in-person was bad, but it of course it's not, it's incredible, but we've really been able to move that into a more digital landscape. And I'm sorry, I'm in Sonoma and there's fires all around us, so my Nick still keeps going off. So if I look distracted, I'm just making sure that's what's going on. So
sorry that you're in that situation. So, and I'm sorry, Ted, did you have anything else to add, or Monica?
I think it's optimal. I mean, we've really optimized our website as much as possible and put as much information on our website as possible. I know it got a little overloaded for a minute, and sending out as many informational MailChimps as possible. I think that first week we were sending out a MailChimp every single day to our customer base, updating them that we're open, we're deemed essential. These are the precautions we're taking as a business. Just really educating the customer on what's going on with our business during that time. Another thing that we've taken advantage of, which I think has actually been pretty successful, is doing more internal videos, so informational videos. So we've actually, at the start of this, we didn't really, we had a marketing team, but not extensive as we have now. We've got a really wonderful internal team that really focuses on these more informational videos and blogs, and it's just because since everything is kind of moving to Zoom, for an example, like everybody's conferencing over Zoom, because for us, since our volume is relatively high, it's hard we have 4 dispatchers back there with 2 phones, and the phone is constantly going off the hook, so we can't. It's difficult for us to really speak to the customers as much as we want to. We used to have that more personal experience with a lot of our customers, which is we still have that, but it's more difficult for us to stay on the phone with the customer as long as possible. So we've tried to make it digitally more accessible for them if they're having problems logging on to the website or figuring out how to use their loyalty points. We've created a lot of videos, and so we have a video library on our website that we can kind of direct them to for all that information. So
that's really smart.
Yeah, and I'll jump in. I think we did 3 things primarily. One, we already were adding more variety to our menu throughout the year. I think we went from having like 120 SKUs to 500 to 600 SKUs on our menu, which I think puts it in a position of being like one of the most comprehensive, if not the most comprehensive menu in the state for cannabis. And part of that was to provide people who weren't having the same access they had before in retail shops to these brands, that access to the brands they loved, and just give brands an extra channel in a moment that was kind of hard for them. The second thing we did was really focus on expanding the territory that we could cover, we would deliver to. We've now covered the peninsula and are live all the way down to the border of San Jose. We also cover East LA, an extra kind of 12% to 14% of Californians are being covered today than they were earlier this year. And that's kind of just in line with our overall mission as a benefit company to provide access to cannabis, safe access in the places we can. And the third thing we did was, given more people are buying online, being able to provide a really personalized experience and start to do recommendations for folks when we're dropping products that they like. So we've started to do that in small ways with our current member base, as well as just build that into the new site that we have dropping later this month. And so, I think those 3 things, more variety of brands to create more channels, covering more areas. So tell your friends in East LA we're live there now, and getting more personalized are how we've responded to some of these changes and the ability to be in person with folks.
Yeah, you've touched upon something, Ted, that I'm very interested in the Onfleet side, which is really looking at the pizza delivery model versus the ice cream truck model. And so it's similar to Schwann's, if anyone's familiar with it, the grocery delivery company. They carry all this extra inventory in their vehicles, and then when they arrive, they do all these types of recommendations about those products. Is that what you're touching upon there, Ted? Is that you guys are moving more towards that, or is it recommendations and then they call back and then they do the reorder?
No, we're not. We are much more like our drivers are much more like a UPS guy bringing you your box with your packed up Amazon box. That's our experience. So our drivers don't have extra product in their car that isn't getting sold to someone. They're up to as close to the limit as we can in terms of value, and they're just going out and doing deliveries pre-scheduled. So it's more on the personalization front about just understanding your actual products and categorizing it, and then being able to recommend to someone, hey, I know you love, I think you love GMO because you like this other experience, so product. You should try out this new GMO sauce that we're dropping. That sort of interaction, and using technology to help aid us and our customer service team to have those really strong relationships. But it is harder if you don't know the brand already, and when brands are still rather inconsistent. It's hard to buy online today, and I think we need to provide that type of categorization to the consumer if we really want them to move over completely or more dramatically to buying cannabis online.
Gotcha.
One thing to that point, Ted, just to add on to it that I think would be interesting is we've seen a real shift because we're an interesting kind of hybrid where we're a brand, but we're also an operator, right? And we've seen a real shift in consumers' consumption of content during COVID, as well as retailers' consumption of content. So in the past, when we worked with the larger dispensaries as a smaller brand, quite frankly, they wouldn't give us the time of day because we couldn't afford to pay them for the platform or whatever. When COVID hit, they were like, oh, you do Instagram Live. Oh, you have videos. Oh, you have stories. Oh, you'll do this. I mean, it was a real interesting leveling experience that I think we experienced across a multitude of our retail partners, and then also across our consumer base, because all of a sudden our click rates on our blog skyrocketed when COVID happened, our desire for content, right? And so I think whether you're a delivery business and working with your brands, or your brand on delivery, or your brand in traditional retail, I don't think COVID's going away anytime soon. We can all admit to that. And I think this idea of content engagement with these consumers to drive education has never been more relevant or powerful.
And then, so I didn't know, Monica, I thought you went off mute, so I wasn't sure if you wanted to add something there, but okay.
I just agree with Erin. I just totally agree with Erin. Exactly what she was saying is we've actually had a lot more brands reach out to us with very specific marketing packages that have to do with social media. We've got certain brands that are like, oh, let's do a BOGO this weekend, and inclusive of that, we're gonna, show you on social. We're gonna shout you out on social media twice, and we're gonna. It's much more. The marketing packages are much more, I would say, aggressive than they were when we were before shelter in place, and they're much more social media related and digital, 100%.
Gotcha. And then I guess, how are you guys attracting and retaining new customers? So is it all through this brand relationships and all of these marketing promotions, or is there something else that you guys are doing beyond that?
Yeah, we've just grown completely organically through word of mouth. We've used other channels in the past, but right now we're growing pretty quickly just by making the product really great and covering more areas.
Yeah, I would say that new customers, a lot of it's organic, similar to Ted. I think for our customer base, a lot of our customers in Marin, we're working in San Francisco and maybe going to some of the dispensaries in San Francisco. And since shelter in place hit, they're working from home. So there's no dispensaries in Marin. So their only option is delivery. So, I think it was really organic search, and then finding us, and then using us, and then that's really a lot of it. And we have done minimal advertising in certain on certain news outlets as far as like banners. So like the Marin Independent Journal, or the San Francisco Chronicle, target zip codes to kind of go back to the SEO. That's I don't really know specifically how much that's helped, but I think it has a little bit. But it's I think a lot of it, similar to Ted, was organic. Just people in our direct area that maybe used to go buy somewhere else. They don't have that option anymore, and we're looking for delivery.
Yep. So going back to kind of the business that you guys are building, when it comes to delivery right now, what are the biggest pain points that you're having, and then what are you guys doing to overcome those types of pain points?
For us, I guess we have the pain point, like probably all of you, cash flow. We run a cannabis business, right? So, keeping up with demand has been a real thing for us. We're going out of stock on our products. And so just really being ferocious about our cash management and our inventory management and how we scale. I think the biggest thing I didn't expect was, along with scale, how expensive it would be and how difficult it would be to scale as a cannabis operator. So, that's our biggest challenge right now. And we're really excited. I guess that's our challenge, right? I'm blessed that that's our challenge, but whether you're doing bad, you have challenges, or you're doing good, you have challenges. It's the cannabis industry, right?
Gotcha.
100% cash flow, and I think also employee management too is a big one for us. yeah, just making sure that we're doing everything properly. I mean, I know more about employment law than I think I've ever wanted to know about, especially during COVID. We actually had to, right before, I want to say at the beginning of this year, end of last year, end of 2019, we employed Work, which is a third-party HR company I predominantly hired them for payroll. We had another payroll company that just wasn't working out. But since then, we went from just utilizing their payroll services and a third-party HR person to now we're like, we have them doing, like, we have a scheduler, we have like recruitment through them, we have everything. So it's that was definitely a big, that's a big you know, you have more people, you gotta make sure you're doing everything even more right. Your I's need to be dotted, your T's need to be crossed, especially during this time.
Yep, definitely hear you there. And then Ted, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, you know, I think one of the hardest things when, you know, I'm trying to build an experience that I love, and one of the things that challenges me is getting consistency of stock from the brands. Because, and I understand this because I've built cannabis brands, and it's hard because of the small batch nature of the industry and just the quirks, whether it's a testing issue or a lab result later after it's even done gets called into question because the lab has some issue. Like there's supply chain issues. It's understandable, but I wish we were always able to buy as much from the brands that we want to, and be able to deliver that experience even more consistently to the consumer. I think really like the big elephant in the room is payments from a credit card standpoint. It is really it's kind of shackling us down as an industry not to be able to use credit cards in a like super compliant way. There are some decent debit card solutions out there, and there's some like, you know, ways you can do credit cards for a bit if you want to, but we don't do that because I don't like to take that type of risk with working capital and not be able to pay someone on time. So for us, like that credit card and just stocking inventory consistently are probably like the two biggest problems.
With go ahead.
In the chat quick, Robert, just to add one thing. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of people talk about tech, and I think tech is definitely also a pain point, especially if you're a tech. Like we use Meadow, we're really proud of it and we love them. We're recent transition to it. But if you're trying to use tech for CRM, for processing orders, for POS, for inventory management, for manufacturing products, for metric, for QuickBooks, right? Like there's this whole suite of tech. And I think it's really challenging also for tech as you scale, like what integrates with what and how do you simplify your tech packages to complement your business that's not an SAP custom creation, because none of us can afford that. So I see all these chats going around about tech, but I think Meadow, you guys maybe could do a follow-up about what you're doing because it's really cutting edge and incredible, and expand into other areas of the business because we need better tech other places too.
You know, Erin, just to touch upon that, I also handle partnerships at Onfleet, and even in my world, and I talk to my partners all the time, it's still difficult to figure out how all the integration flows work, who's interacting with who. And I agree with you. It's very interesting, and I can only imagine for somebody new coming into the industry, or when I think about the developing markets out there, that these whole new markets, they have no idea what they're coming into, and all of a sudden they have like 50 POS options, like, and it's just all these different pieces trying to put it together like a puzzle. So we're working on that at Onfleet too to try and give that clarity, and I'll definitely work with Hua's team to try and build that out as well. And then just in regards to, so all of you are right now in a hiring phase, and then also are you guys, how do you balance your hiring with the uncertainty of COVID, right? Because we see these peaks and valleys where it seems like things are getting better, and then all of a sudden people might be returning to some sense of normalcy, but then all of a sudden things start to move back. And I'm just wondering how you keep up a balance with I guess the growth of your team, and then also this uncertainty of possibly having to reduce a team.
Sure, I'll talk. So yes, we're hiring. We furloughed people when COVID hit because our investment was set to close March 31st and our investors got COVID and then the economy crashed. So they pulled out. So when that happened, we ended up having to make some really difficult decisions and reduce our team because we had to look at the longevity of the business, right? And assume we had not one more penny coming in from the outside investor capital area. So we reduced staff, and then we really looked at our cash flow again and talked about how we could reduce our expenses, how we could manage our cash flow better, how we could flip our cash cycle around, where we could lean into our growth to collect faster, where we could throttle to pay slower. And we're able to really streamline and change some key dynamics. And then with that, we actually looked at diversifying. So we're now back to hiring. We're hiring in the production room. So we actually started contract manufacturing for a few other brands. As many of you know, we run our own wholesale distribution as well as we're with Herbal. So we're really diversified across each channel. However, we're laser focused on Garden Society, and that diversification gives us stability. So our delivery business is growing, but if that slows down, we have our wholesale business and those customers shift to in-store retail. Well, we have the consumer there as well. And then instead of looking at how we look at competition, we say, let's work with our competition. So we have that business as well. So that diversification during COVID has been incredibly useful for us. We actually doubled sales from May to August, and we're continuing on that growth trajectory right now. So it's been pretty fun. It's been a pretty fun ride.
Gotcha. It's a good way to do it. Ted, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I think we've been incredibly lucky during this period of time to add some key hires who are incredibly talented and experienced. And, there's a lot of people who, were let go from other industries that have experience that can be really valuable for ours. And so I've used this moment as an opportunity to just get an even stronger team. And I think we're coming out of it in a better place. We were never in a position during this where we were cutting folks during kind of COVID. Before COVID, we had kind of tightened our belts as a team, just seeing that the funding environment for the industry was really changing at the end of 2019. So we were already in a position where we were pretty bare bones and as efficient as we could be. But I think we still are in a kind of moment where we're trying to bring in as much of this really good talent that's out there as we can, and just provide them a job within an industry that is growing at a time where a lot of the other ones aren't. I think we've also been able to use that pool to diversify our team and come out of it with more backgrounds within the organization, which I think is going to make us a better company as well.
Monica, do you have anything to? Yeah, go ahead, Monica.
Yeah. Similar to, both speaking to what Erin and Ted just said. We also do have a distribution business. So we have the distribution, Nice Guys distribution. We have Nice Guys delivery. And it actually kind of works out because when I originally applied to the licensing program at San Rafael, I applied to both, saying okay, if one doesn't work out, we'll just pivot our business and do the other one. But we have got both licenses. So now, especially now, it works out to our benefit because, again, we really have that other license to kind of lean on in case, anything does happen with delivery. We can pivot to the distribution model, and they're kind of deliveries up here and distribution's a little bit down here, and it's still a newer business for us. But it's having that kind of safety net has been beneficial. And then I will also say, similar to Ted, we've gotten some really key strong players in our company, and it's really and wonderful people to keep in mind. And we also have, like I mentioned previously, the marketing. We have a marketing team. We have a robust, amazing marketing team now. We've gotten to have an IT team now because of all of the needs that we have with technology. And we were rolling with those debit machines for a hot minute. and everybody was coming to me to fix them. And I was like, I can't do this. So I actually, from that, we had these really amazing employees that actually worked for us that had previously worked in IT, and they started helping me. And I'm like, great, we've got an IT team now. So from that, we've actually been able to kind of start to segment the business into these different little pods of operations, and it's been great in that aspect. Just and then obviously just company culture and keeping our staff happy and healthy has been, just really, really, really important to me. I mean, I can't sleep at night sometimes, especially when this first started happening, is because I was constantly worried about their health. I was constantly worried about everybody's safety. But I will say that, it's making sure that all you have all your operating procedures are buttoned up, and just constantly checking in with the team to make sure that they're providing you with comments of what you can do better as a business to make those people want to stay with you, and yeah.
Yeah, I thank you, Monica. I mean, and that's definitely the most important part. Safety during this time is paramount, and I love hearing that. That's your biggest concern, and I hope you don't lose too much sleep over that.
Yeah.
So I want to say thank you to everybody for attending the panel. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for answering all the questions. And this is actually all the time we have for today. So thank you to all the listeners out there as well. And obviously, we love Meadow, and I can't wait to have Meadowlands back in person again. Such a different experience, but this has been great, very educational. And well, thanks, everybody.